All right, we're diving into something pretty intense today. We're about to unpack a stark and, let's be honest, challenging perspective on the psychology of attraction. This isn't your typical dating advice. Think of it more as a cautionary guide.
So let's just get right to it, shall we? The source material we're looking at makes a very bold claim that most men are failing when it comes to seduction, simply because they're working from a place of, well, profound psychological ignorance. And this isn't presented as some minor blind spot.
And look, the warning here is stark. This isn't just about, being unsuccessful or getting rejected. The argument is that this ignorance actively turns you into a tool, something to be used, manipulated for emotional or financial reasons, and then ultimately just discarded.
So what is this trap that so many people apparently fall into? And how exactly does it work? Let's break down the fundamental misunderstanding that sits right at the heart of it all.
Well, the very first mistake, and it's a huge one according to this view, is trying to use logic to solve an emotional puzzle. The direct confessions of love, the constant attention, the big gifts. The problem is, seduction is described as an emotional landscape, one that's built on things like contradiction, mystery, and tension, not a logical checklist. And this right here is where it all goes wrong. The direct, logical approach that seems so sensible often has the exact opposite effect. It can actually kill the excitement and the uncertainty that, from this perspective, is the actual fuel for emotional desire. That's the trap.
Okay, moving on. Section 2, Why Ignorance is Dangerous. And I've got to say, the source material is really clear on this. This is not some harmless little mistake you can just laugh about later. The consequences are described as severe and, frankly, painful.
You see, when someone doesn't understand these emotional dynamics, they risk being seen not as a potential partner, but as, well, a utility, a tool. You become the emotional outlet, the walking wallet, or just the backup option until someone more exciting comes along. And that's the real kicker, isn't it? This psychological blind spot. It's perceived as weakness. And in the high-stakes world of seduction that's being described here, weakness doesn't just invite failure, it's an open invitation for active manipulation. But this all leads to a really critical question, a real pivot point in this whole thing. What if trying to master this external game of influence and control is completely missing the point? What if the game itself is just another kind of trap? Section 3, the power of the shadow. Okay, let's really lean into this idea because everything is about to shift. We're moving away from this external game of control and turning inward to a much, much deeper and more challenging personal journey. So to really grasp why that external game is a trap, we have to talk about a concept from the legendary psychologist Carl Jung. He called it the shadow. It's basically all the stuff about ourselves that we've pushed down and refused to look at. Our anger, sure, but also our creativity, our power, our wildness. And this quote from Jung is so powerful because when you ignore your shadow, it doesn't just vanish. No way. It starts running the show from behind the curtain. It's what drives our self-sabotage, our compulsions. It makes us feel like we're victims of fate, when really, we're just prisoners of our own unexamined minds. Now, this is where it gets really fascinating when it comes to attraction. It creates this powerful dynamic called projection. You know that feeling when you're just completely mesmerized by someone? Well, a lot of the time, what's actually happening is we're seeing our own hidden qualities, our own shadow reflected back at us in them. It feels like this incredible connection, but it's often based on a fantasy, the hope that they can complete us. Which brings us to Section 4, Reclaiming Your Inner Power. So, you see, the real path to genuine power and true magnetism, it's not about learning psychological tricks to use on other people. It's about doing the tough internal work of integrating your own psyche. And this is a fantastic, practical roadmap for what's called shadow work. It's the actual process of making that unconscious stuff conscious, noticing what you judge in others, exploring your own difficult emotions. It's all about slowly but surely reclaiming those disowned parts of yourself. And, when you do this inner work, it changes everything about how you behave. You stop being a puppet to your own emotions. Instead of just reacting on autopilot, you learn to see your feelings, understand what sets them off, and choose how you respond. You gain control. And this comparison just nails the transformation, doesn't it? It's the difference between being vulnerable because you're needy and you're desperate for approval, versus being vulnerable from a place of real strength. That second one, that's not a cry for help. It's a confident offer of genuine connection.
All right, our final section, Section 5, the magnetism of wholeness. Because at the end of the day, this whole internal journey leads to something that just can't be faked, a kind of magnetism that's, well, it's just effortless. So think about it. When you've actually faced your own light and your own darkness, you develop this solid, grounded presence. Your confidence isn't flimsy anymore because it's not based on what other people think. You're authentic. You're not easily shaken. And that depth, that's what's truly intriguing.
And this brings us to the great paradox at the very heart of all of this. The real goal was never about mastering some game to attract other people. The real goal is to do the inner work to become a whole person. And the funny thing is, that magnetic quality we've been talking about, it just becomes a natural side effect of that journey.
So we're left with this final, really powerful idea that just flips the whole script on attraction. It suggests that the very moment you stop chasing and needing to be desired, that's the moment you become the most desirable. It's a cautionary tale, for sure, but one that ends with a profound lesson on self-possession.